Hey everyone, and welcome back to Retro Legends. Today we're diving into a real piece of video game history, the Sega Master System. In this video, we're going to uncover 10 surprising facts you probably didn't know about this iconic console. Get ready to travel back in time through behind-the-scenes development, little-known details, and unforgettable stories. Let's begin. Before it was known as the Master System, this console was first released in Japan in 1985 as the Sega Mark III. It was the result of years of experience gained from its predecessors, the SG-1000 and SG-1002. The SG-1000, launched in 1983, was Sega's first real attempt to enter the home console market. It was released on the same day as Nintendo's Famicom. However, the SG-1000 wasn't as advanced as the Famicom. Despite a decent start, it never really caught on. The SG-1002, released in 1984, was basically just a cosmetic update with a few minor hardware improvements. It didn't change the game. Seeing the Famicom's huge success and Nintendo's growing dominance, Sega knew it had to step up its game. They needed a console that was significantly better, and that's how the Mark III project was born. With more powerful hardware, more colorful graphics, and improved sound, the Mark III was a huge leap forward from Sega's previous consoles. It used the Zilog Z80 processor, which was also famous for powering many arcade games. It could display up to 64 colors at once, a big advantage over its rivals. The Sega Mark III had a boxy design, typical of the 1980s, but it wasn't a huge hit in Japan at first. Part of the problem was that Nintendo was already incredibly popular in Japan. There also weren't many games that were only available on the Mark III, so people weren't really motivated to switch. To try and find more success overseas, Sega decided to give the console a makeover. They made it look more appealing and relaunched it in 1986 as the Master System in Western markets. It came with a complete brand redesign and a new, more aggressive marketing strategy. This was one of Sega's first major attempts to establish itself as a global competitor to Nintendo. Now, when it came to technology, the Master System was a step ahead of the Nintendo Entertainment System. It could show way more colors on the screen at once. We're talking 64 compared to the NES's 25. This meant that the backgrounds in games were more vibrant, and everything looked more detailed. Even the sound was better. The Master System had a special chip that could make clearer and more complex sounds. And in Japan, there was this cool thing called the FM sound unit. It made the music in games even richer and more advanced, almost as good as the music you'd hear in arcades back then. On top of all that, the Master System could handle bigger characters and smoother animation. This made the graphics in some games look really impressive. But even with all these advantages, Nintendo was already like the big kid on the block, and it was tough for Sega to compete. In North America, Nintendo was everywhere. They were like the only game in town because they made these deals that were kind of strict. They told game makers they could only make games for the NES, so the Master System missed out on a lot of popular games. Plus, Nintendo was in all the stores and had these big commercials on TV all the time, which left Sega with just a tiny bit of the market. In the US, Nintendo was like the king of video games. It was really hard for Sega to convince people to try something new. But in other parts of the world, like Brazil and Europe, things were different. The Master System actually did really well there. They made some smart deals and kept selling it for a long time, even when newer game systems came out. One of the main reasons the Master System had a tough start in the United States was Nintendo's really strong contracts. Back then, Nintendo made game developers sign agreements that said they could only make games for Nintendo. If a company wanted to make games for the Nintendo Entertainment System, they weren't allowed to make those same games, or sometimes any games at all, for other systems like the Master System. This rule affected a lot of the big game companies back then, like Capcom, Konami, Taito, and Hudson Soft. It meant they couldn't work with Sega. Because of this, the Master System didn't have as many games when it first came out, and it didn't have some of the super popular games that everyone loved on the NES like Mega Man, Castlevania, or Contra. This made Sega's console less exciting for people in America because Nintendo had a much bigger selection of awesome and new games. On top of that, Nintendo's contracts also affected stores. Some stores didn't want to sell Sega products because they were worried they would lose the chance to sell the NES, which made more money, or that Nintendo would work with them less. This made it harder to even find the Master System in stores in the US, and it was tough for Sega to get noticed. Even though the Master System was a really good system, it was hard for it to compete with Nintendo, who basically ruled the video game world back then, especially without a ton of popular games and without being in a lot of stores. Even though the Master System wasn't as popular as its rivals like the Nintendo Entertainment System, it still made a big impact on the video game world back then. It had a bunch of games that players still remember today. Among its most famous games, we can find some true classics that define the console's library. Phantasy Star is definitely one of the games that helped build the Master System's legacy. This role-playing game was one of the first to bring the RPG experience to a home console, with an exciting story and turn-based battles that made it captivating and really immersive. Set in a science fiction world, Phantasy Star combined exploration, battles, and a progression system that fascinated fans, becoming one of the most beloved games ever. Another big hit for the platform was Alex Kidd in Miracle World, which saw the protagonist Alex become the face of Sega before he was replaced by Sonic. In this colorful platformer full of strange characters, Alex made his way through levels full of puzzles and enemies to defeat, and it even had a fun mini-game based on the famous rock, paper, scissors, which made every encounter even more interesting and unpredictable. Speaking of Sonic the Hedgehog, while the game is undoubtedly tied to the Sega Genesis, the Master System version shouldn't be overlooked. Although simpler than its 16-bit counterpart, this version managed to convey all the energy and speed of the Blue Blur, with equally fast-paced gameplay, but adapted to the power of the 8-bit console. You can't talk about the Master System without mentioning Shinobi, one of Sega's most beloved action games. In this game, players took on the role of a ninja tasked with rescuing hostages and defeating enemies in missions full of action and spectacular acrobatics. The ability to use a wide variety of weapons and ninja techniques along with a variety of enemies made Shinobi a true gameplay masterpiece. Among the games that most defined the Master System experience is Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap, a platform action game that stands out for its non-linearity and the ability to transform into different characters, each with unique abilities. This game left an unforgettable mark on the hearts of fans, also thanks to its charming graphics and its ability to offer dynamic progression. Another game that deserves attention is Golden Axe Warrior, which took inspiration from The Legend of Zelda, but managed to carve out its own identity with a gameplay structure that combined exploration, dungeons, and battles against fantasy enemies. Despite the technical limitations of the console, the game managed to offer an epic and satisfying adventure experience. For shoot-'em-up lovers, R-Type is a must. This arcade game, which was ported to the Master System with surprisingly detailed graphics for its time, gave players the chance to experience a true space shoot-'em-up, with challenging levels and gigantic bosses. The innovative use of the power-up system and the variety of enemies made R-Type a memorable game. Miracle Warriors: Seal of the Dark Lord, another role-playing game for the Master System, offered a fantasy setting with a large map to explore and battles that tested players' strategic skills. Its complexity and the freedom it gave the player in managing their resources made it a highly appreciated game. We can't forget Zillion, an action-adventure that blended combat and platforming, with a plot inspired by a Japanese anime series. This game attracted many fans thanks to its futuristic atmosphere and its well-designed levels, which required skill in both combat and exploration. Finally, Space Harrier was one of the first games to use pseudo 3D graphics, creating a gaming experience that felt cutting-edge for its time. With its psychedelic landscapes and frantic speed, Space Harrier was a game that surprised players, bringing a feeling of flight never seen before on consoles. Besides the classic cartridges, the Master System also supported a different format called Sega cards, also known as Sega My Cards in Japan. These were very thin memory cards, similar to credit cards, that could be inserted directly into a dedicated slot on the console. The idea behind Sega cards was innovative for its time. Because they cost less to make than traditional cartridges, Sega aimed to offer games at a more affordable price, making them easier to buy, especially for young players. Sega cards were also physically smaller and lighter, a detail that Sega used as a marketing point. However, despite this interesting idea, the format was quickly abandoned. The cards had a much smaller memory capacity compared to cartridges, usually around 32 kilobits, compared to 256 kilobits or more for cartridges, which prevented the creation of complex or long-lasting games. This led to titles that were generally simpler and less impressive than those on cartridge. Moreover, the physical card itself was more fragile and less resistant to wear and tear compared to the robust cartridges. Over time, the technological limitations of Sega cards became apparent, especially as console games grew in complexity and size. The business strategy also had an impact. In North America and Europe, many later Master System models completely removed the card slot, a sign that Sega itself had decided to focus solely on traditional cartridges. In total, very few games were released in the card format, including titles like Ghost House and Transbot. Today, Sega cards have become quite rare and fascinating collector's items that tell an interesting chapter in Sega's hardware innovation and experimentation during the 1980s. The Master System controller was known for its simple but very functional design. With its compact rectangular shape and a small number of buttons, it offered a straightforward and uncomplicated gaming experience. One interesting feature that made it unique was its removable D-pad, an element designed to allow players to customize the feel of the joystick, adapting it to their preferences. This accessory could be removed and replaced with another version, which offered a different response to movement. However, not all players appreciated this feature, some finding it impractical, while others considered it an innovative solution to improve accuracy in games. The Master System controller, despite not having the same notoriety as other controllers of the time, remains an example of how Sega tried to balance simplicity and innovation in a single device. In 1990, Sega decided to relaunch the Master System with a new version called the Master System 2. This version was mainly designed to reduce production costs and make the console more affordable in an increasingly competitive market. This market was dominated by Nintendo, but also buzzing with the arrival of new platforms. The Master System 2 featured a completely redesigned look. It was more compact, lighter, and had smoother lines than the original. It was also designed to be more visually appealing, especially to young people. To further reduce costs, Sega removed some features that were present in the first version. Gone was the Sega Cards reader, which was outdated and rarely used. The reset button was also eliminated, a choice that simplified the internal circuit and reduced the number of components to assemble. In addition, the Master System 2 no longer had the expansion port found in the previous model, limiting any future accessories. Despite these shortcomings, Sega managed to make the console cheaper to both produce and sell, allowing for an aggressive pricing strategy in key markets like Europe, Brazil, and Australia. Another interesting element was the inclusion of a game directly in the console's memory. In many versions of the Master System 2, when you turned it on without a cartridge inserted, it would automatically start Alex Kidd in Miracle World, one of the most beloved titles in the Sega library. This bonus increased the perceived value of the console, as new buyers immediately had a full game to try without having to buy anything extra. Thanks in part to this move, the Master System 2 achieved considerable success, especially in territories where the NES was less dominant, consolidating Sega's presence in several international markets. Today, the Master System 2 is considered a fundamental part of Sega's history, a symbol of the company's ability to adapt and reinvent itself while keeping its arcade and innovative identity alive. The Master System was much more than just a rival to the NES. It's a console full of innovation, fascinating stories, and a legacy that still stands today, especially in unexpected markets like Brazil. We hope this journey through 10 things you didn't know about the Master System has excited you as much as it has us. And with that, our journey into the past comes to an end. How many of these facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell for more journeys into the world of retro gaming. Thank you for watching Retro Legends, and see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends.